50/50 raffle drawings, and that's a separate thing, so those are the white tickets. So that was the main thing. I want to make sure I got that out of the way so these people aren't throwing those things away.
That's what you see in the deck.
Oh, and that's going to be, you're drawing.
Well, they're putting the white tickets in.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Jim Eckhoff will be taking care of that. And he'll probably be leaving the table and heading for his car and getting out of town or something. Anyway, that was on an announcement I wanted to make.
Okay, if I have everyone in the room, please rise.
Yeah.
Go guard.
What do you want?
Shit. Easy, lad.
Half step.
So we don't step
Forward, march. Mark time. Mark. Squad. Halt. Left. Face. Present colors. Everybody join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2. Reach up, cover, right face, half step, forward march. Please take your seats.
I'm working. Can't take it.
You don't have to sit here.
Couple of quick remarks here.
Yeah, sure.
We started with the official portion of our ceremony. A couple of words to pass. First of all, absolutely without saying, a big thank you to the Honor Guard for giving up this Saturday evening for us. Thank you, gentlemen.
I wouldn't take him home.
And I'll tell you a couple of news updates. I spoke with Don Rourke today. He was very pleased to find out how things are going smoothly yesterday. And the best news was all his blood work tests were at a record high, and he was really feeling good because this was the first time in a long time that the medical tests had come back the right way. So I passed along everyone's thoughts and prayers for him, and he was quite appreciative of that. I then spoke to Jack Pressler, who was released from the hospital yesterday, and to tell you the truth, he sounded pretty whooped, but he was under the influence of some various meds. But by the time I got through the conversation with him, it had buoyed his spirits tremendously to find out everybody was thinking of him, and that he liked the direction the association was moving forward. So we all have to keep both of them in our thoughts and prayers. And then a couple of other thank yous to make to Jason, our videographer. Jason Little, he's got to be a good guy with a name like that. And he's putting a lot of hours this weekend to make this happen. And Bruce's daughter, Katrina, who I last time I saw her, she was about that big.
Yeah, sure.
And we were both a lot younger. And her friend Denise, is it Mew? Pronounce it correctly. They're going to be photographing things for us tonight, so we appreciate your effort in doing this. And then last and certainly not least, I think that we all owe the spouses a big round of thanks. I know mine hung in with me for 41 years in the Coast Guard, another couple of civilians. And for those of us who work in the organization and have spent time in the Coast Guard, other law enforcement jobs, the spouses who have stayed behind really deserve a round of applause. So thank you all. So, okay, now, Bruce had to run upstairs. He forgot something. So, everyone like a joke? Yeah, she's going, not again. No, but, well, I'll kind of do an introduction for Master Chief Patton here a little bit out of schedule, but well, actually he needs no introduction, so I'm not going to do one.
Yeah, there you go. Works for me.
Yeah, no. In reality, and I think everybody knows that he's also a PhD. He holds a doctoral degree, so he's earned the title of doctor. But I prefer to call him Master Chief because, you know what, I don't think being a PhD is all that hard.
That's right.
Compared to being a Master Chief.
That's right.
And here's what I'm going to say. This, as a way of introduction, my limited experience, interaction with Master Chief, I don't know whether you were a land area command chief or you're a headquarters visiting land area, but I remember listening to you at a speech a number of years ago, and I thought, boy, this guy is good. And if I can ever make it past ensign, I want a guy like this as my command chief. And I ended up not getting passed over too many times for ensign, so we moved ahead. But this guy is a real chief, and I think this is the best bio I can give on you, and the best salute I can give to you is that he is a real chief, and here's a quick and easy example. Ran into him yesterday when he first got into town, and you know, what are you doing tomorrow? He said, well, I'm going down to Arkansas to visit the Coast Guard lady. And many of you have heard about the Coast Guard lady, but she was a spar back in the old days, and has continued her interest in the Coast Guard and handwrites over 10,000 cards and letters a year to Coast Guardsmen around the world. And she just celebrated her 95th birthday, was it? 95th birthday, okay? So here this guy flies in, he's on somebody else's nickel, he's got time off in a great town where he could be doing a lot of other great things, but instead, what does he do? He does what a good chief does. He does the right thing, and he went and visited the Coast Guard lady. So that's the type of guy you're going to hear from a little later tonight. So welcome aboard, Master Chief.
Thank you, sir.
And to you. Okay, Bruce, we're back on schedule here?
Yeah, I think I win here.
Okay. Well, okay, while you get your win, I'll give one more thank you.
Okay.
And that is, we did it yesterday, but I think we need to do it again. The tremendous amount of energy that Bruce has expended, the tremendous amount of time and spirit that he's put into this has made it a great gathering. So again, thank you, Bruce. Okay.
I'm almost a little late on this, but you can remain seated. You don't have to stand. I'm just going to give an invocation. So you just bow your hearts. Eternal Father and Lord of hosts, we humbly ask your blessing upon those of us assembled here this evening. We thank you for the sustenance of which we will be partaking, and ask that you would guide and direct our fellowship this evening to be one where each of us brings to the banquet table years of experience, observation, insight, and counsel as wisdom to share in such a way that we all leave the table with far more than we brought. We also ask that you keep a protective hedge of blessing around our nation's military in harm's way, wherever they may be in the world. All this we pray in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. You got any more tickets? Oh, you got them in there.
The next thing, something I wanted to feature in here was a missing man ceremony. And I'll explain it. You'll see this table here. And like I say, as you enter the dining area, you may have noticed this table here at the front. And it's raised somewhat to call your attention to its purpose. And it's reserved to honor our missing comrades in arms. Normally they set the table for 6 with the other 5 services, but we have a limited situation that we have it set for 1. But Normally they would have 6 representing a missing person from each of the 5 services, the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, and the Coast Guard, and civilians. This honor ceremony symbolizes that they are with us here in spirit. Now, some in this room were very young when they entered into combat. However, all Americans should never forget brave men and women who answered the nation's call and served the cause of freedom with honor. And I'd like to ask that you might stand for just a minute and remain standing for a moment of silent prayer. You may be seated. You may be seated. Now, I'd like to explain the meaning of the items on this special table. The table is round to show our everlasting concern for our missing men. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their motives when answering their call to duty. A single red rose, displayed in a vase, reminds us of the life of each of the missing and the loved ones and friends of these Americans who keep the faith, awaiting answers. The vase is tied with a red ribbon, symbol of our continued determination to account for our missing. A slice of lemon on the bread plate is to remind us of the bitter fate of those captured and missing in a foreign land. A pinch of salt symbolizes the tears endured by those missing and their families who seek answers. The Bible represents the strength gained through faith to sustain those lost from our country, founded as one nation under God. The glass is inverted to symbolize their inability to share this evening's toast. The chair is empty. They're missing. Let us now raise our water glasses, if you would, in a toast to honor our American POWs and MIAs and to the success of our efforts to account for them. Hail, lest we forget. Thank you. And one of the reasons that I wanted to factor this in, I have a list of the Coast Guardsmen who were killed in Vietnam. I was in Vietnam in '67 and '68. And we had a fellow there, was a pilot, Jack Redisher, who was involved in the exchange program where Coast Guardsmen flew the Jolly Green Giants of the Air Force in pilot rescue and pickup, and Air Force pilots flew on search and rescue in other places. But he was MIA, considered MIA for a little over 35 years until they found his remains. And I'm also a member of the Coast Guard Combat Veterans Association, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to factor that into the ceremonies this evening. And I guess that's about it.
So when you go through the chow line, reach for your wallet in the back pocket and bring that $5 bill down to me. I want you in front of me.
I will. I kept it back here for a little bit. Was it?
Work with all these men when I put them in their place.
But you did. Cheryl Brooks, I was a special agent in New York for 80 through 86. My distinction is I'm the only special agent to ever marry a special agent.
Was it a special wedding?
I'm Joe Herron. I was in 1811 hired to be the ASAC in New Orleans at the 8th District, and then became the SAC. And from 96 to 99, I was up at headquarters when CGIS was first formed, and I went up as the Chief Investigations, and left in 99 to go back on active duty with the Army, from which I retired about 2 years ago. And this is my wife, Peggy. Hi, Peggy.
Dan Moser. I was started off as a security manager in New Orleans.
and ended up getting promoted to lieutenant, went up as the assistant chief of security, and then went over to CGIS right before they stood up, and I was on the other side of Joe, and I was the chief of the administration department. Took over when Jack Treskler left and went over to the 9th. And this is, yeah, we all have. This is my wife, Pat, and she's been with me going on 35 years.
Up till today.
Up till today.
I'm Walt Bodner. I was in the program formerly for only 3 years in the 8th District. Dan came to work with me, and I think we taught each other a little bit while we were together. And I think that I've always been with the program. It's just one of those things. This is family. It's the best job I ever had. And remember, I was a pilot. Okay, I love to fly. This is the best job I ever had, and I still want to stay in it and commiserate with all you wonderful guys, and Freddie with them too. Thank you very much.
I'm Bill Whetstone. I went through Treasury Law Enforcement School, 1957.
Oh man.
Last century. Was sent to St. Louis, the old 2nd District. Was there until 1961 when they sent me to the 3rd District, New York City, and we were at the Customs House. That was back before Governor's Island was taken away from the Army and given to the Coast Guard. But, I spent a good time as an XI investigator. Enjoyed it so much I got out of the Coast Guard, went to college so I could get a commission, and figured, well, I'm going to join the Great White Fleet. Next thing I know, here comes a set of orders. We want you at headquarters. So there I am in Chief of Operational Intelligence Branch, and that was fun. That was fun. I've enjoyed everything that I've done, and I'm really glad to be here with all you fine folks.
My brother said I should get up and talk. No. My name is Bob Duffy. I'm from New York originally. I live in Pennsylvania now. I spent 26 years with the Coast Guard. I was in service. I was a special agent from 1975 until 1999 when they drummed me out for being over 50 years old. and I enjoyed the whole time with them. And I'm a retired New York City police detective also. Thank you very much and good night.
That is all.
Howard, you want to start that back table for us?
All right.
Hi, my name is Ray Sanford. I started my career with Coast Guard Intelligence in 1st District, Boston, as a what was that? As a security manager. I went from there. I was reassigned to security manager, 12th District, and I was the first one to get to do back-to-back tours. You know, I didn't allow that much. And then I went to work in a new office called PAC Area Intelligence, where I was a intelligence officer. And very interesting jobs. I liked them all, and enjoyed working with all the agents and people that I met. This is my wife, Maddie, and we've been married 13 years. Wow. 13 years. Thank you.
My name is Howard Giblin. I went to CGI in 1971 from New Orleans to Long Beach. Was in Long Beach from 71 to 75. Went to San Francisco, YBI for a couple of years, and went back to Long Beach as a supervising agent in 78. And 79, got promoted to warrant and went to headquarters as a yeoman detailer, and was there 7 months. And Toby Chapeau in 12th District called me and said he got a billet for a warrant, and he wanted me to take the billet. So I was in headquarters like 11 months out of a 4-year tour. Went back to 12th District as a supervising agent there as a warrant. And as far as I know, I was the first warrant assigned to Coast Guard Intelligence as a warrant. And then I finally went this much and said I retired in '81. So that's it. And this is my wife, Vicki, and today happens to be our 6th anniversary.
My name is Mike Egan. I came on with the Coast Guard in 1990 in 11th District, and I left there to become our first representative to FLETC. And then I left there for not greener pastures, but pastures as they were. So I'm glad to be here. And this is my wife, Dan.
My name's Dan Motley. I've been with the Coast Guard. I was with the Coast Guard 24 years. Started out working operations out of Detroit and then moved around. The last 14 years I was an agent. Worked Long Beach, Alameda, and South Padre Island. I retired in 2006.
Hi, I'm Gus Oviedo. I've had a varied career with the Coast Guard and law enforcement agencies. At my last job when I retired, I was the special agent in charge for the Pacific region for CGIA. This is my wife, and she's had to put up with it for 48 years.
Hi, I'm Lonnie Johnson. Oh wait, no, I'm Jim Eckhoff. I've done tours, short stint in Long Beach in the 11th for about 4 months. Then I went up to the 13th District, reported in, and Lonnie was the senior agent, had full head of hair, and it was all dark, and when he left, it was white.
You know why?
Then they promoted me to warrant, and I had to go do my penance on the Taney for almost 3 years on a 2-year tour. Then I came back on the job to Alameda. I did 3.5 years, and they gave me a set of orders to headquarters, and I retired. So that's it. I did 26 years with corrections in California, and I'm still keeping Lonnie on his toes. Thanks.
I am Lonnie Johnson. My first 16 years in the Coast Guard was a radio operator, and I was very happy at being officer in charge of Coast Guard Radio Tokyo. I could have stayed there the rest of my life, but one day I got orders for the 3rd District, and it's the only time I've ever cried in all my time in the service. When I got to Governor's Island, I immediately put in for OSI school. And I don't know who or why, but I got it. And I spent my first tour in Kodiak as the senior agent, and then in Seattle as the SAC. I live in Oregon, and I don't care where you guys meet. I hope to be the last man standing.
I'm Scott Nystrom, and I thought I was the only security manager here, but we got a couple others, which is good to hear. I guess out of Boston, retired out of Boston in 2007 after almost 30 years, and claim to fame is keeping the 1st District or the Northeast Region's CGIA facility operating. Just doing all their inspections and making sure everything was good there. So glad to be here.
Forgot something. We forgot something.
My wife's with me too. She told me to forget about her, so I did.
Forget about it.
My wife Paul is with me too.
I'm Bruce McKinnon. I was a special agent at CGI from 81 to 90. Spent the whole time in the 1st District. Did 3 years in Boston, then went down to be RA in Cape Cod from 84 to 91, and then I became a civilian supervisory special agent, and then we moved on to other things. It was a great time. I worked with Mike Farrick the whole time I was there, so we definitely had some interesting cases.
Okay, I'm Marty Phillips. Yes, I was an agent back 74 to 77 at the Washington Field Office, and I think that's where I first met Bruce through there. Several of the others, but when they were getting about ready to rotate back into rating, I went and applied and ended up going through OCS. So I ended up spending 32 years in the Coast Guard. Didn't get an assignment back in intelligence after that, but had that long. And I'm here with my wife, Joanne. We've been married only 43 years. Can't catch up. I'm already standing. I'm Grant Spooner. I originally enlisted in 1961, and they stuck me on a buoy tender. And I figured that's really hard work, and it's dangerous, and it's dirty. Scraping out a couple buoy tubes really gets your attention. So I became a snipe, an engineman, went to engineman school. So then he put me on the Cherokee. So I spent 2 years on the Cherokee, on 3-hour standby. I finally got off her. They sent me to moorings in Curtis Bay. So I was on 40-footers, and they were always on call. So I've been on call the whole time, I think. I finally got out because I couldn't handle the Outer Bankers anymore. Everybody was named Mitchell or Scarborough or O'Neill. So I went to college on a GI Bill, finally got a real job, went to work as an agent for the Internal Revenue Service, which made me real popular. And I was sitting in a class, and this guy in the reserves said, "You ought to get back in the Coast Guard." So he hounded me for about 3 weeks. He's sitting next to me. And I finally go, I studied this damn second-class radioman recruiter in Chicago. I got out as a second class, and I figured I went to college, I got 2 degrees, maybe I might be first class. Not only wouldn't let me take first class, it wouldn't even let me back in the same rate. So I came back in as a port security man. I did a lot of time going sideways. I think I had 5 or 6 rates. And somewhere along the line, I got a Cox and pin, all that stuff. And one of the guys dragged me over and says, "You want a badge?" Okay. So I went to Cleveland and became a special agent. Lasted there about 3 years because I got stupid and applied for a commission. And they said, "Wait a minute, you can't be an officer. Give me the badge back." So I became an officer, and I lasted there about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And I got reducted out and came back in as enlisted. And what did I do then? I stayed in the reserve program and then miscellaneous stuff. Then 9/11 put me back on active duty, and that's where I wound up. I retired from active duty. When I turned 60, they threw me out. They gave me about 4 hours notice. I was gone. Fortunately, I wanted to stay, and they actually tried to get me to stay, because I could have stayed to 62. But Cleveland said, "No, you got to pay them out of your operating funds if you're going to do that." I said, "No." So I'm out.
Aren't you forgetting something?
Oh, I forgot her too. Yeah. It's a table. That's a table. This is my wife, Sue Ellen. We've been married 14?
Almost 14 years, yes.
14 years.
Okay, it's that table.
Yeah.
That table.
That table.
My name's Don Pace. I was recruited for CGI by Dick Denisio back in '73. And after OSI school, I spent just a few short weeks in the 3rd District and then went up to Boston with Rudolph Uttendorsky, if anybody remembers him, was the senior agent. And then Bruce relieved him. I was the first RA on Cape Cod, and I stayed there until '77 when I made warrant. I went back to general duty. They brought me back in '86 as senior agent in the 1st District, and that was at the time we absorbed the 3rd District. So that was rather interesting. I retired in '88, and I spent 24 years as a criminal investigator for the state of Colorado, and retired from there almost 3 years ago. And this is my wife Terry, and we'll be 50 years in January.
I'm 44.
I'm Frank Sambor. I hobble around a little bit because 8 weeks ago I had a hip replaced, so I got a matching pair now. But I started my career in Governor's Island on the Spencer, old steam plant. Went on to a district office there and landed up in Cleveland, Ohio, where I was branch chief of the OYL. I had the opportunity and blessing, actually, of my senior agent was Woody Kluge, if anybody knows him. I'd really like to know how to get a hold of him because I haven't. Last time I've seen him, he was staring at my back. But
I'll give you the information later.
Okay, all right. But I had him there, and I got to learn a lot from Woody. I think he might have been the first agent to ever go to the FBI Academy. He went to the FBI Academy over there. Little episodes in there, I won't get into the details. But anybody knows Randy Trapp, Rob Wells. A little incident happened one day. I figured that was it. My career, I'm done and gone for. But you know, everybody survived. All I'll say is Rob came out and said, "Rob, boss, Trapper shot me." We'll end it there. He did. But from there, I was in Cleveland from, 78 to 83. Then I landed up going ahead a little bit. I was down on the Ute, and I spent a couple of years chasing smugglers down there, which I really enjoyed that. Then I went to the search and rescue branch in the district in Miami. But there I actually got to work with the OLE people, and I spent a couple of trips as Com Caribberon down deep south. I was on Navy LST, and we had the Fimrons running around trying to go after smugglers. Helped Venezuela get their first seizure, which was pretty good at the time. I don't think we're speaking too good to Venezuela now. But I landed up in St. Louis, again, as the branch chief. And the OCDF coordinator, and that's where I ended my career. And I retired in '92, still had 5 kids at home, couldn't be retired, so I went back and got my teaching certification. I had an engineering degree, went on, got a teaching certification, and I taught for 16 years. And honestly, the time in the Coast Guard versus the time teaching, the Coast Guard was much easier. Much more entertaining. This is my lovely bride of 42 years. I figured 42 is pretty good here. You guys can beat this out. Gail is, and those people at the show last night. Yes, I am sometimes annoying.
My name is Steve Little. I'm going to make sure I don't forget. This is my wife of 44 years and 22 days. And tomorrow's her birthday, and she's going to be old enough to drink. Leave with that. Leave with that. I came on the job in '73, thanks to the good graces of Dick Denisio, had the faith in me to bring me on the job. Went up to Boston. I do have to, confess to my sins and take responsibility for my actions. I take some responsibility for bringing Mike Ferrick into the program. So, love me or hate me, I don't know, but I can understand if you do either. He's a terrific guy. And I had after I worked for Uttendorfsky, though we did have another name for him, was something Damsky or something, whatever. But I had the great honor of working for and learning from Bruce. I continued to do that. And so I did a couple of years in Boston, then went down to Connecticut to be the RA down there. there was no sense in me going back to being a gunner's mate. We didn't have any muzzle loaders left anymore. And, so I thought, I think I use these fancy things with triggers. I'm not more of that. So, but mostly thanks to this guy. He gave me the experience and the trust and the faith to go ahead. So I had a great job with Defense Criminal Investigative Service for 20 years blank owner. Stayed in the reserve all that for the next 31 years after that. And finally, they threw me out too when I hit 60. But it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Absolutely the best thing that ever happened. You're up, boss.
My name is Bruce Shields. I guess most of you know that. I started my career in the Coast Guard in 1956. I dropped out of college, came in Coast Guard, spent 4 years in, was probably the only non-rated enlisted man as a seaman, replaced the chief hospital corpsman at Angar Island in Palau. And the same drill happened a little while later at Falwab Island in Lithia Atoll. At any rate, I got out of the Coast Guard in 1960. Was out for about a year, then joined the Air Force. I didn't go to boot camp. They sent my records there, but they sent me direct to Strategic Air Command Intelligence.
That's the time you get arrested for murder?
Yeah. We won't get into that story.
Only for a short time.
But I was attached to the intelligence directorate. I was actually assigned with the 544th Reconnaissance Intelligence Group. And after I finished my tour there, because of the Class Q clearance from the Atomic Energy Commission, I was transferred to the National Security Agency headquarters at Fort Meade. And I got kind of disgusted with what I was seeing there compared to what I'd seen at SAC. And I got out, and then was out for about a year and ran across an old drinking buddy. And it was a recruiter in Omaha, Nebraska, and one thing led to another, and I raised my hand, shipped over. Came back from the Coast Guard, went to Governor's Island, and they were taken over from the Army there at Fort J. And talked to Dick Denisio about coming on intelligence with the Coast Guard. Got some experience with it in the Air Force. And then I had a chance to go to Vietnam with about a 10-minute notice, and I took it. And I came back, I was there in 1967, 68, came back, and then I went on duty with the Coast Guard Intelligence, took me on uniform for 10 years. And I was an investigator XI at Portsmouth, Virginia, and then they made us special agents, and I was resident agent at Baltimore for 4 years, and then senior special agent at Boston for the last 4 years. That was my twilight career, and I pulled the plug and got out. And a lot of them says, what are you going to do, go work for another agency? I says, no, I'm going to go to school in GI Bill. I've always wanted to get a college education. So what are you going to major in? I says, philosophy and history. And they says, you're stupid. How you can't make a living on philosophy and history. I said, no, but I'll learn how to enjoy my poverty. Grow a little ginseng, sell a little timber, and royalties on the gas wells. And while I was working to set this up, my teenage bride of 53 years passed away in December. But I have real Social Security. My daughter is here, Katrina. And my other daughter will be retiring from the Navy in about another 2 months. And so I've had a very, very fortunate and blessed life. And I thank all you guys. I've met some wonderful people that I didn't know before. Just getting affiliated with this group as it's growing and coming along. It's been a real joy. Thank you.
Say a few words, just a moment.
Please go ahead.
I was the first woman Coast Guard agent, and I just want to acknowledge the wives of the agents, because the surveillances, the hours, you were out of town like 2 and 3 and 4 days without being able to call, without being able to say where you are. And I've taught a lot of military wives, and they've had a lot of problems with marriages, just in the military, being married to a military man. But I don't see how any woman can make a marriage with a special agent in the Coast Guard. Because you don't know, they can say they're down at the library doing research, which they do have to do a lot of things like that. And you don't know whether they're out with someone, you don't know where they are or what they're doing. And I just want to acknowledge, thank you women very much. I did get a phone call the first time I went into the office from a wife, and she said, you know, we really don't appreciate you being out on the road with our husbands. And I could understand that, because that was several years ago. I tried to show them they did not have to worry. It was like just being with my brothers, but they didn't go for that. But thank you. Thank you very much for being such good wives to these ladies.
Thank you, Mary. That kind of takes us back to the time when, I guess it was 73, when the first females went through OCS, and Bonnie and Jill McGee came on board as our assistant branch chief. And I must say, there are some things that may have happened then that would probably get us court-martialed today. But we all grew up, and in fact, she wanted to be here, but she had already booked a cruise with her husband John. Anyway, thank you, Mary. Appreciate that, and thanks for reminding me to get everybody up to introduce. You can see we got a pretty motley crew here. And, if you want to leave now, that's okay. We would understand. But if you want to stick around, without any further ado, I present to you Master Chief Vince Patton.
I wrote a speech so you won't be here longer than an hour. Well, good afternoon, Captain. Thank you very much to the guy that I recruited. Gosh, how long ago was that, Grant? 1976?
77, I think.
You know, Grant talked about all of these things he had to go through when he was coming in the Coast Guard. You know, he complained about, you got to come back in the second class. So I had to put up with this guy. And throughout our careers, because I was at his retirement when, so I could make sure he was leaving. And I always heard from Grant, and I was very proud of him because of the things that he did throughout the service. So it really is a great honor to get to see you all and chat with you. And I'm going to talk about something probably a little different. I mean, first and foremost, before I get into what I'm going to talk about, is about your profession as a whole. And Frank Tabor and I, we've worked together in Cleveland, and I was his mole, so to speak. Had to work with the agents when we were dummying up records, and Frank would come and say, we got to do a record now. So he come back to me after I did it up, and he says, this doesn't look right. I said, you never do a record to look perfect. Because out in the real Coast Guard, nobody has a perfect record. And Frank just said, it makes sense, doesn't it? I said, there you go. But your profession as a whole is something that's very unique, and something I have always honored by virtue of the fact of knowing a little bit more about what you do, and then seeing the evolution of how the Coast Guard Investigative Service Program has changed, even before my eyes. I'll never forget the time when during my time as Master Chief of the Coast Guard, when Jack Cornett and Marty Martinez came into my office. I had asked them to sit down and talk to them because I was in a meeting, and we were talking about how much money the Coast Guard was wasting with folks that were going into CGI duty and the time that was spent. And just about every agent I talked to, they were getting out because they couldn't advance. So here you are, an MK or EM or whatever type of rating that you just can't study for in order to prepare to be able to go up to the next pay grade. And then meanwhile, you're in a profession of sorts that your civilian counterparts are making twice as much and so forth. So we were losing very good people. And I thought this was ridiculous. So I asked Marty and Jack, I said, have you guys ever thought about coming up with a career track program for agents? And he said, well, we talked about it all the time, and it's all on deaf ears. I said, well, did you ever have any advocates? And they said, no, not really. I said, well, what if I can get the Master Chief of the Coast Guard and get involved in this? He says, well, would you really? I said, sure. Because where it was hitting home the most is that the Commandant, Admiral Lloyd, at the time, his own agent was getting out. Great guy. And he told us numerous times he didn't want to get out. He was getting out because he couldn't make chief. And so the next option for him was getting out of the Coast Guard. So I went over to see Admiral Loy and I says, boss, I got a plan. The plan is that let's look at creating a program within the CGI force to where they can make warrant and they can stay in, and then we got a happy crowd, because the money we're spending for people getting out of the Coast Guard and the experience that we were losing was ridiculous. And he says, that makes sense. So the program as it is today, I'm not saying I'm going to take credit for it, other than the fact that I paid attention. I paid attention to listening what many of you, particularly many of you, who during your time and during my time of seeing what kinds of things that you have done and what you do. I mean, truth be as it may, that TV show NCIS. I mean, you guys were NCIS Coast Guard wise when it wasn't cool, and you really did the right kinds of things, and I really applaud each and every one of you. And Mary, it's an honor to see you. Never met you before, but I knew of your name and the honor of the fact that serving as the first woman in that particular profession, and several have gone on since you, and I've talked to one of my dear friends, Peggy Recruito, who I had served with when she was a young, before she went as an agent, and she also talked about some of the challenges that she faced, but it was great to be in that role to finally see the groundbreaking. So it's really an honor to see you there. Well, tonight I want to talk about something different. It's something that's near and dear to me, and it's about history. And I think reunions are about history. I mean, when I was asked by Jack Pressler if I could come and speak here, he kind of asked with the sense of feeling that he didn't think that I would do this. And the answer is I would do this, because reunions are very important, because it really is about preserving our legacy. And particularly these types of professions that you have. I really don't think you have any real idea in terms of the groundbreaking that you've done and the time that you've been in to bring the program to where it is today. It's very critical. And it's also just as critical that you get together and continue to get together to whoever is the last man standing to ensure that we preserve this legacy. But I'm going to talk about something that when we talk about legacy, it's about our service song, Semper Paratus. Now, forgive me for not singing this with pride, but this is one of those songs that everybody's got to sing together, but I want to read it because I want you to hear it. From Aztec shores to Arctic zone, to Europe and Far East, our flag is carried by our ships in time of war and peace. And never have we struck it yet, in spite of foeman's might, who cheered the crews and cheered again for showing how to fight. We're always ready for the call. We place our trust in thee. Through surf and storm and howling gale, high shall our purpose be. Semper Paratus is our guide, our fame, our glory too. To fight to save, or fight and die, I, Coast Guard, we are for you. Now, I felt by reading these words is an affirmation of understanding the most important part of our history, heritage, and traditions by using this song to highlight our purpose here tonight. In the over 224 years of the existence of our service, men and women of our Coast Guard have consistently done the impossible, where we have always answered the call at any time, anywhere. When Captain Francis Saltus von Boskirk wrote this song over 90 years ago, it was his desire to create something that sounded like a history book. He carefully wanted to ensure that our legacy as a humanitarian, naval, and military service would always be thought of whenever we would proudly sing this song. What I think Captain Van Boskirk didn't realize as he penned the words Semper Paratus was the beginning of establishing a record of our service's accomplishments and create a preamble that defined the very core values that we live by today: honor, respect, and devotion to duty. Listen carefully the next time you hear Semper Paratus. And the words of our Coast Guard's core value of honor, respect, and devotion to duty are inherently placed throughout the song. That's one of the reasons why I made it my personal commitment during my tenure as Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard to embrace our history, heritage, and traditions. I believe having every recruit that left the front gate of 1 Monroe Avenue, Cape May, New Jersey, to be required to learn and understand every word to Semper Paratus. The song itself is all about knowing what our standards are for this organization and being able to follow them. Just like the Marine Corps uses the words of their service song in the Marine Corps hymn. Over a dozen or so years ago, when I was on active duty in my position as Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, I was speaking at one of our annual Chief Petty Officer Association conventions. I had the importance of this song explained as it vividly described our service's legacy. It was somewhat surprising, at least to me, that during at that time, a large number of our enlisted workforce did not know the words to the song Semper Paratus. They could carry the tune but stumbled on the words, which bothered me quite a bit. Mostly because it was mandatory for officers going through the Coast Guard Academy, or OCS, to learn the song and actually sing it on demand correctly without hesitation. I had attended a change of command retirement ceremony for a captain that I had the pleasure of serving with over the course of my career. At the end of the ceremony, he asked everyone to join in to sing with him our Coast Guard song, Semper Paratus. As I looked around the audience, I could tell that many of the enlisted members stumbled on the words or said nothing. That bothered me. And sometime later, when I got back to my office at CGHQ, I sent out an email to all the Command Master Chiefs telling them about this observation that I had experienced at the change of command retirement ceremony. And it may have come as a surprise to some of you that I received a few replies back from the Master Chiefs admitting that they too didn't know the words to Semper Paratus. I felt at the time, and as I do now, how important it is to ensure that everyone, regardless of your rank or even your status, be you active duty, retired, reserve, auxiliarist, or civilian, to not only learn the words verbatim of our service song, but to also understand what every word and verse means, and then translate it on to subordinates, junior officers, or anyone that doesn't know the Coast Guard story. And to expand a little bit on this topic, there's another story here that I experienced that I'd like to point out. And it bears a little bit to understanding the merit of my case. During my tour as the Atlantic Area Command Master Chief in the mid-1990s, I attended a formal dinner event in New York City during their Fleet Week celebration. At this event, I happened to sit next to a young Marine Corps Lance Corporal, pay grade E3. Because I was in my traditional dinner dress attire, which to some doesn't give much distinction of whether you're in the Navy or the Coast Guard, it was difficult for the young Marine to notice my branch of service. So he readily assumed me to be Navy and asked a question about if I had ever served on an aircraft carrier. When I responded I was Coast Guard, his eyes lit up with gleam and began telling me the heroic story of Douglas Monroe, as if I had never heard it before. Now, this wasn't a typical 15-second, oh yeah, Douglas Monroe is your only Medal of Honor recipient, but rather a very detailed description of Monroe's life, when he joined the Coast Guard and why, and how he gave his life saving 5,000 Marines. This mini history lesson given by this Lance Corporal went on for about 5 minutes. Now let me tell you, I was impressed. In fact, to put it more succinctly, my jaw dropped in amazement. First of all, I knew this Marine couldn't have studied this overnight to hopefully sit next to a coastie and try to impress him with this knowledge. This young Marine talked about Douglas Monroe as if he were his father or some close relative. Dumbfounded by getting all of the detailed information, I asked the young Marine, who, by the way, had only been in the Marine Corps for 18 months at that time, who taught him this information and why? He looked me square in the eye with that typical Marine Corps stare of discipline and said with both a bit of pride and respect, he said, "Master Chief, we learned that in boot camp. Douglas Monroe saved Marines. He's a part of us." You might also be interested to know that when the National Marine Corps Museum was built in 2008, among all of the hundreds of exhibits displaying the history of the Corps in the Marines Hall of Heroes, showcasing Marines who were awarded the Medal of Honor, Douglas Monroe is also included. So that young Marine was not only right about Monroe being a part of the Marine Corps history, but remains widely revered as part of their legacy. It was also during my tenure as Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard where in 1999, the Chiefs stepped up their game by making the impossible possible, holding an aggressive fundraising campaign as well as a do-it-yourself project rehabilitating Monroe's gravesite in Cle Elum, Washington. Monroe's grave was a simple plot in a small town of just a few hundred people, about 70 miles east of Seattle. Only the headstone, which was issued by the government, was the only significant sign that a true hero's final resting place was in this cemetery. The Monroe family had pretty much moved away from the town of Cle Elum, so just a small handful of people even knew about Monroe. However, for 40 years, Monroe's longtime friend, Mike Cooley, held a daily ritual where he would quietly go to Monroe's gravesite at Laurel Hill Cemetery in Cle Elum, raise the American flag in the morning, and at sunset would retire the colors. Cooley did this for 40 straight years, only missing one day because of pneumonia. Finally, as he approached his senior years, he knew he couldn't continue this for long, so he reached out for help. Cooley made a blind phone call to the Coast Guard base in Seattle, simply asking if the Coast Guard could install lights at the base of the flagpole so the flag did not have to be raised or lowered every day. The senior chief on the other end of the phone soon rallied the chief's mess. And by carload after carload, they trekked 75 miles one way east on I-90 over several days, taking on the task to not only install the floodlights, but they moved the flagpole closer to Monroe's grave, cleaned out and painted an old World War II gun mounts that were salvaged from a Navy destroyer. Acquisition anchor chains to establish honor. You know, telling this to ages, you know what I mean by that. Acquisition, right?
Well, they went to the Navy.
Acquisition anchor chains to establish an honor boundary around Monroe's gravesite, and a host of other improvements. And after more than 55 years since Monroe's remains were transported from Guadalcanal to his hometown of Cle Elum, an honored shrine was finally created, giving the well-earned, well-deserved resting place for a hero. Interestingly, today, September 27th, marks the 72nd anniversary of Douglas Monroe's heroic action on Guadalcanal, as well as his death. I believe it is only fitting that I openly read a citation that accompanied the award of the Congressional Medal of Honor. And I ask for those of you who are willing and able to stand, to please stand while I read. The President of the United States of America takes pride in presenting the Medal of Honor to Signalman First Class Douglas Albert Monroe, United States Coast Guard, for extraordinary heroism and conspicuous gallantry and action above and beyond the call of duty, as officer in charge of a group of Higgins boats engaged in the evacuation of a battalion of Marines trapped by enemy Japanese forces at Point Cruz, Guadalcanal, on September 27, 1942. After making preliminary plans for the evacuation of nearly 500 beleaguered Marines, Monroe, under constant risk of his life, daringly led 5 of his small craft toward the shore. As he closed the beach, he signaled the others to land, and then, in order to draw the enemy's fire, and protect the heavily loaded boats, he valiantly placed his craft with his 2 small guns as a shield between the beachhead and the Japanese. When the perilous task of evacuation was nearly completed, Monroe was killed by enemy fire, but his crew, 2 of whom were wounded, carried on until the last boat had loaded and cleared the beach. By his outstanding leadership, expert planning, and dauntless devotion to duty, he and his courageous comrades undoubtedly saved the lives of many who otherwise would have perished. He gallantly gave up his life in the defense of his country. Signed, Franklin D. Roosevelt, President. Please be seated. A footnote here, among the Marines who took part in this operation was the notable famous Marine, Lewis Chesty Puller, who was a lieutenant colonel at the time. It was Puller who submitted the recommendation for Monroe to posthumously be awarded the Medal of Honor. And also, as a testament of Monroe's selfless act of courage, his last words as he whispered to his fellow shipmate and childhood friend, Seaman First Class Ray Evans, he said, "Did they get off?" I have often used the phrase, be the example, set the pace, and follow the standards of conduct whenever I describe what I think is an understanding of what true performance is. In order to live up to those words, you have to know what our past is all about, what it has taught us, and what today and our future will bring to carry on. As we look back at our organization's past accomplishments, we learn with envy and sometimes with curiosity just how it is a cluster of people from all walks of life get together for the common good. With limited resources, our service always had, and we sometimes tend to make it happen without a trace of showing any difficulty. The Coast Guard has always been an organization made up of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. The first chorus stanza of our service song says it all. We're always ready for the call. We place our trust in Thee. It defines who we are and what we are challenged to do anytime or anywhere. You know, history is a wonderful thing. It tells us a lot about our culture, about ourselves. Many of us learn a great deal of experiences through the eyes of those who have gone before us. We picked up the examples of what's good, what's great, and what we should be thinking about doing again. However, most importantly, we get a great sense of understanding what our core values are all about. In my 30 years of active Coast Guard service, I've often heard from people who are quite intrigued about our service. The mystery that surrounds our existence, that tells the great stories of our past, must not remain a mystery. We have a story to tell, often through the eyes and mouths of those among us. I will challenge anyone, anywhere, anytime, that anyone who is or have served in the Coast Guard, regardless of status, active, reserve, retired, veteran, auxiliaries, civilian, have a sense of pride and enthusiasm that no other organization can match. It is time for us to step forward today and tell that part of our history that binds us through our service song, our core values, and our camaraderie with one another. Also, during my tenure as Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, I made it a practice that each time I gave my annual oral testimony before the U.S. House of Representatives, in which at that time it was before the House Transportation Subcommittee, which the Coast Guard was under at that time, I thought it was appropriate to praise the great things that our people have done in the previous year. And in keeping with my good friend and mentor, the late Chief Alex Haley's statement of find the good and praise it, I believe it's important to recall the numerous great deeds our people have done for our service. For every medal that was awarded to someone, There's scores of others who have had a hand in making that recognition happen. These are the historical stories we must capture and continue to share with one another. And as a reminder that our service's legacy of being a high-performing organization. As I close, I'd like to leave with you one less used piece of documentation as a reminder why Semper Paratus is more than just a song. In 1938, then Commandant of the Coast Guard, Vice Admiral Harry G. Hamlin, published a proposed creed to capture the elements of what is a Coast Guardsman. Just as the song Semper Paratus captures the history of our service, the creed of a Coast Guardsman tells about the people who make the history so rich in tradition and proud to serve. The creed goes like this: I am proud to be a United States Coast Guardsman. I revere that long line of expert seamen who, by their devotion to duty and sacrifice of self, have made it possible for me to be a member of a service honored and respected in peace and in war throughout the world. I never, by word or deed, will bring reproach upon the fair name of my service, nor permit others to do so unchallenged. I will cheerfully and willingly obey all lawful orders. I will always be on time to relieve and shall endeavor to do more, rather than less than my share. I shall always be at my station, alert and attending my duties. I shall, so far as I am able, bring to my seniors solutions, not problems. I shall live a joyous, but always with due regard for the rights and privileges of others. I shall endeavor to be a model citizen in the community in which I live. I shall sell life dearly to an enemy of my country, but give it freely to rescue those in peril. And with God's help, I shall endeavor to be one of his noblest works, a United States Coast Guardsman. Though this document was written and published 76 years ago, every word to that creed still follows true today. Besides the story of Douglas Monroe, there are many others throughout our 224-year history that superbly matches the words of our service song. From the Pea Island Life-Saving Station heroes, the rescue efforts of lighthouse keeper Ida Lewis, the one-man single-handed rescue efforts of Chief Boatswain's Mate Richard Patterson during the unfortunate friendly fire incident that occurred on the Point Welcome in Vietnam, as well as other notable events throughout our Coast Guard history, all are evidence of pride and enthusiasm from being anointed a coastie. Many of us here in this room can probably lay claim to the fact that we have performed a noble service during our tenure and have upheld the value, belief, and passion of our service to the motto and song, Semper Paratus. Fellow Coast Guardsmen, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an honor to speak with you today, and with the distinct pleasure of recognizing who you are and what you do, and applaud your efforts and your continued role of preserving our legacy. God bless you all. Semper Paratus.
The epitome of what every Coast Guardsman should try to be. Here he is, how many years retired now?
12 years.
12 years retired, and he's still out there like a chief, teaching everybody. That was incredible. Thank you so much. I don't know how we're going to top that. I don't know how we're going to top that for years to come. I know. Grant Liberty. And that's laying it down. And actually, you got the duty tonight.
You know what?
Your duty comes when
my phone rings, it's the Coast Guard.
Thank you again, Master. That was stirring and a whole bunch of other actions.
You guys carry guns, I haven't put it.
And you know every word, right there?
Almost. Okay, well now, on a kind of serious note, Bruce has got two things as we honor and remember some of our fallen members. So Bruce, you want to come up and talk about Ken Bramwell?
Bill? I hope all of you had an opportunity to read that little handout I laid at each seat place there explaining the meaning of the ceremony we do. We didn't do this for several years, but then someone said we have visitors and guests that come to these functions that have no idea what in the world I'm doing up here with this remembrance for our fallen and deceased agents. And of course it started off with just a few, but now we're well up over 100, so I don't read the whole list in total bells, but we try to keep it to the ones who either passed away in the last year or we learned of in the last year. Some have passed away a long time ago. And we recognize them with the tolling the bell ceremony. And actually before I start that, I was in the hospital this spring getting open heart surgery. And when I came out, the first thing I did when I got on the internet about it, I guess the day after I got out, was check on our webmaster, Ken Brandon, and learned that he'd passed away due to heart problems. Had a stent put in, he was doing good when he got home, and then the next day he developed problems, and Geneva, his wife, called the hospital, or the ambulance, and the policeman came there first and said he's essentially gone, and he passed away then. It was quite a shock to me. And and rather than refund any money, she sent for this entertainment package that we had in the last couple of days. She said, just keep the money, Bruce, and if you could put together some kind of a little memorial ceremony or something to acknowledge Ken, which I've done. I don't know, some of you had a chance to look at this. If you haven't, it's the memorial plaque. And it says, in memory of Kenneth N. Brandel, Special Agent, Coast Guard Investigative Service. And also asked her if she sent a photograph, which I have up here, so if you have a chance later, you can pass by and take a look at these things. And on the back of it, I had an inscription engraved, and I'll read it to you. A lot of you will be familiar with this. It's not an unusual poem in that sense. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not here. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on the snow. I am the sun and ripening grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hushed light, I am the upfling of birds in flight. I am the soft star that shines at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die. The author was Mary Elizabeth Fry. I'll be saying that to her after our reunion. Also, we have a professional video production company documenting this 10th anniversary reunion. You'll notice these people with cameras. Grant Spooner's kind of jumped in here, helping out too. But all of this is going to be documented in a DVD. It'll be about a month after the reunion before I get it out to you all, but I'll be sure to get each and every one of you a copy. And with that, we'll move to the tolling of the bell. And before we start the tolling of the bell, I want to read the crossing of the bar. And the print's awful small. I forgot my regular copy, and Lonnie came to my rescue, and he's got the print of it. So I'll read that first. A sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me. May there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea, but such a tide as moving seems asleep,
too full for sound and foam, when that which drew from out the boundless sleep turns again home. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark. And may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out our bourne of time and place, the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. And with that, we'll move to the tolling the bells. We've got 7 here, and I'll read the name, and Bill Westone will toll the bell. The first one on the list, I've gotten where I know an awful lot of these guys. It gets hard to do this sometimes. The first one is Carl Absher. The next one is Gerald Jerry Arnold. The next one is Kenneth Ken Brandel. Next one is Allison Al Day. The next is Russell Farrar. And then Joe Hamilton. And finally, Lee J. Leba. Okay, and that kind of ends the serious aspect. Now we'll move on to some things a little lighter. A lot of you, I hope, got some of those white tickets that Colonel Farrick over here was hawking. I won't tell you the story about the Colonel. He may elaborate on it if he chooses, but I won't do that. We'll just have to raffle off the 50-50 drawing first, and then we'll have a drawing for the CGIS badge plaque. And after that, I've got a box of door prizes here, and that's what your blue tickets are for. I'll be calling off numbers from a box for some things might be valuable and some might not. They're all meant in good. Yeah, but there's be a little levity to it. So without that, I'll turn this over to Mike Farrick, who has the tickets for his thing, and I don't know who wants to draw. Mike, you can draw. You got them all mixed up.
Get your daughter to draw it.
How about Mary?
Okay, let's do that. Mary, you draw for it.
Come on, Mary.
You gonna draw it?
I'm gonna shake them up.
I don't trust you.
Well, I don't mind doing it because I never win
Okay.
anything, so I'm sure I'll be drawing my own.
Read the top left-hand side. Did I shake it?
Not that. Just don't stir it.
Anybody else, everybody go with this? On the left-hand side. Oh, shit, I can. I'm sorry, this number is void. I won. Number is 509. I gotta get my tickets, so. Oh, Jesus.
509, I got it.
509 350. 509 350. Look at this. 350. Look at mine. Wait a minute, hold on, 350. Wait a minute, it's 360. Let me see your number.
Sit down, Dad.
It's 360. Son of a bitch, you won.
What do you reaching for?
You only get half that money now.
Yeah, you get half of it.
You're gonna hold me up and give me the money.
Here's your half and the rest of the dollar. We collected $123, right? $123. That'll be, we'll give you $62. How's that? We'll give you the extra buck.
Wouldn't you rather bring that over here to give it in?
He's living on the motorcycle.
40, pass it. 50. 62. Count that.
You get out of here. Well, I can still get out of here.
He really put it. Treasurer Jim.
What's Treasurer Jim?
He's
Put that in the bank, will you?
Yeah, my bank.
My bank. My bank.
It's in the bank.
Thank you.
Let's go stand up at the bar.
Thank you. Want to do it again?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You ripped the tickets up. I don't want to do it.
No.
I want to know what the flask is for. Is it Irish whiskey, Jameson's?
I'm going to talk about that later.
Hey, if I got the mic for a second, I got to tell a funny story. Can I tell a funny story? Once upon a time.
There's ladies here.
Excuse me?
There's ladies here.
I'm going to raffle off my socks later. When I was trying to come into the program, I was going to what they then referred to as BNDD school. And I was sent down by the state police where I worked for. I was on the cap, my hair was down halfway down my ass and beard and so forth. So I went to school. It's the old, what the hell was the name of that building? Fargo building in South Boston, if anybody remembers that. That was the Navy office. So I got down there and I ran into Steve Little, Don Pace, Willie Williams, and a score of other people from all across New England. So they started talking to me, and I told them, I was in the Coast Guard, now I'm in the reserves, and I got some Lieutenant JG, Lieutenant, has no idea what to do with me with long hair. And he kept on making me wash windows every time I went for my drills. And I said, I'm a second-class petty officer, I'll be in charge of somebody. I was full of shit too, but I said, I'll be in charge of somebody washing windows, but I'm not going to wash the windows again. I think I washed the same windows about 3 times throughout the district office. So talking to these guys, they said, boy, we could really use somebody like you. I was working drugs for the state police. And would you ever consider coming into Coast Guard Intelligence? I didn't know what Coast Guard Intelligence was from the Red Sox. So I said, yeah. So we talked for a while, and I said, who do I got to go see? And they said, go down to 150 Causeway Street and see Tom, Phil, and Jerry. And I said, well, who do I see? Tom, Phil, or Jerry? And this is the God's honest truth. And he was the agent in charge. I said, who? Tom, Phil, and Jerry. That was his name. Tom, Phil, and Jerry. In fact, he's on the list as being departed. And they were kidding me. I thought there were 3 agents in charge. But I went down, and the rest is history. And Bonnie, Jill, and Bruce, and Steve, and Don, and I mean, just a bunch of great guys. We had a lot of fun in the many years. And some of the guys, Don Pace. We had several state police officers from Maine, from Vermont, from New Hampshire, from Mass, from Connecticut. We had some great guys, but most of it was because of Bruce. I'm blowing smoke in Bruce's direction. I should. I think a lot of us should blow smoke in Bruce's direction. Quite a guy. And Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard. Excuse me. I've never met you or heard of you before, but that was an excellent speech. I think it was. I'm glad we gave you $5 to come here tonight.
And dinner.
And dinner. You got to pay for the dinner, both of you. Steve Little, that was a good job, Steve. And right after this week, I have enough money for the haircut, so don't worry about it. Sorry to take up your time.
Chief, I told you, I said something to tell that to follow. It wasn't as good. He's moving up the line. Anyway, I think we're now ready for Jim Eckhoff to raffle off the badge right there. Is that correct? And I want to thank Jim because, as I understand it, he's the moving force behind procuring this, putting out the outlay and making this happen as a fundraiser for us. So, first off, Jim, thanks for your efforts to do this.
He's been telling us he carved it.
He still did it. Hey, I want somebody to say, hey, make this happen.
You went to China first, though.
Yeah, I went to China, then to the Philippines. I need to borrow my jug. Your jug? Are these tickets done with? I said you can take a shirt. Are we done with these?
Yeah.
That's done. Yeah. There's less of these.
Would you tell us where you got that and how much it cost?
It's on the back of it. There's a sticker. You can look later.
When he wins.
How about the rest of it?
Yeah, when you win it. Whoever wins it can, no, I'll tell you here.
No respect.
It's getting dark.
In case nobody's seen it, here's the badge we're raffling off. It came from Plaques and Patches. They're online, they have a toll-free number right here. Anybody interested? This is a 10-inch. We're going to do a sales pitch here. They come from 8 inches up to, I think, 20-something inches. So you can get any size you want. I thought this would be about the appropriate one for Monty Johnson to hang on his belt. So, before we... Looking around, I'm trying to find somebody honest.
This lovely, our lovely assistant.
Yeah.
Top right.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
I don't even want to say the name.
There's no name on it.
I'm embarrassed to say his initials are SL. Steve Little.
You're kidding.
No. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do.
New raffle.
Well, we can auction off, right? Okay. Anybody who wants it, no, pick another number. It's too confusing right now. Pick another number. Pick another number.
Okay. To start, you want to auction it? Anybody want to go for an auction? No. Pick another number.
Just draw another number.
Did you buy one?
You pull it, Steve.
Let Steve pull the number, he's already handed it back.
Yeah.
Diane Little.
Yeah, that's
Is the name that long?
Man, no, I wrote.
It's his name.
I wrote that.
Oh, no. If you wanted to write.
I wanted to be a surgeon.
Maybe what your boss said about your penmanship?
BRANDACHS. You're number 105 on the roster. It's nobody here, I can tell you that.
Oh, okay.
Because everybody here, I just said you put your last name.
It's passed away.
It's your ticket number 2. I know they're not here, so I have to mail it. So
Good. You gonna mail it?
you're all losers. So now I gotta take this thing back on the plane.
Okay, well, again, thank you for your efforts and that. What do you think we made for the treasurer?
No, I think they have a list of all the addresses.
This right here costs, as you see it, $90. And we made about $250. You brought in about $250.
That's a good presentation to make.
Right. Okay, well, again, thank you. Okay, so now Bruce has got the door prize raffles here. And, somebody take my tickets, please. Yeah, we're just gonna throw them out randomly. Put it in the box for next year. Yeah. have a ticket, I don't want to win anything else. Next thing I'll be winning, I'll get drafted. Yeah, have a ticket.
Thank you.
Ticket.
Good job there. Well, before we start drawing here, I'm going to have a presentation to give to the Master Chief, who has dignified us with his presence and gave, I thought, a very stirring talk. Also, when I first set up this reunion some months ago, they have what's called a Medal of Honor room. If you'll notice, I just stopped the main door here to your first left. If you haven't been in there, I'd suggest you go in there. It's a very fascinating experience to read some of those citations from those awards for the Medal of Honor. But the thing that I noticed when I was here, I told Sarah, the sales manager, and I've been working with her over the year, and boy, she's been a spark plug to keep me going. But I told her, I said, you know, I've looked at all these citations, and I don't see one for a fellow known as Douglas Monroe. He's a Coast Guard, and he's our only Medal of Honor winner. She said, I had no knowledge of such a thing. But in a very short period of time, his citation is up there. If you go into the door, look to your left in the corner, that's where he's located. So just wanted to point that out. Kind of ties in with what you talked about. I was just really impressed with it. But anyway, we just want to give you a couple of items here, Master Chief. One is
the bill for the dinner.
This is the last one we have. That contains our organization logo.
Thank you very much.
To give you another one here, this is a special agent.
All right.
I don't either side. I'll give you the box so you put them back in to travel with.
Thank you.
And
I can scare people.
yeah. And this is our
Thank you very much.
And this is our challenge coin. And what I put in there, the history of the challenge coin, made it very familiar because I plagiarized it.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start this dubious project here.
Raymond, before we start,
Oh, sure.
I'll do it while everybody's standing up here. I know this is for you, because I know you have been working very, very, very hard, and I know you had to put an awful lot of time with Don not being able to make it and so forth. But I want to give you my Master Payoffs to the Coast Guard coin.
Thank you.
Kiss.
Well, that's the Christian thing to do. Well, like I say, we've come to this point here where probably the most unimportant part of the program tonight, in fact. But let's hope we can enjoy it. Our door prizes vary from little to no significant value, and some are well worth having, surprisingly. The beauty at this point is you all have an equal chance. So, let's go. The first item I have here, let's see if I can. This will be a nostalgic thing. First we have here, like I say, a little nostalgic item from many of our respective childhoods, and as soon as I mention its name, no one has to be told what it is and what it does. It was known as, it's a slinky. It's kind of the infamous item. It's a very slack but long spring, and whether you're just sloshing it from hand to hand or letting it go follow itself down the stairs, no childhood really, or dare I say adulthood, is complete without it.
So you're starting with the high value item first?
We'll let this guy do the drawing.
Mr. Lucky.
He'll probably his own ticket too.
Okay. 886546.
That was.
Yep.
That
That's one of his.
6'5", 6.
That was one of his.
That's the one he gave you. That's the one you gave That's the one you gave me.
What am I doing here? Why am I not playing?
Was it your ticket?
Yeah. The one I just gave you.
This was uncanny.
Yeah, come get your file. Oh, yeah. There we go. There we go.
Next year, if we have any raffles, you're banned.
I guess so. Competition.
Didn't he get the first?
Yeah.
Through its investigation.
Yeah, make a loud. Yeah, you should be
Okay, our next item for drawing is it's called a retro minifan. Actually, it's the only thing retro about it is that it's all metal. At any rate, it's as soon as you, whoever gets this, it's ready to cool you off right on top of your desktop. It's in this little box here. Go ahead and pull another one out, Steve.
Okay, here we go. Do it again. 886497. 886497.
Who else did you give tickets to?
It took me a while to find it, but I got it.
That's okay.
There you go. Where's my prize?
Person integrity.
You got it. By the way, when you get back to Maine, we're going up to Oxford Casino, okay?
Okay, our next item here is what's called a lampless lava goob tube, or ooze tube, as it says on the box. It's about an 8-inch high plastic tube. It has two hollow containers, one on the top, one on the bottom, which has been placed into it has been placed a quantity of some kind of viscous goo, which oozes through a central hole between the two compartments in the tube.
Too much information.
At any rate, it's very reminiscent of the old lava lamp, which many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with.
Yeah, sure.
And they seem to be making a comeback in a lot of the stores. It's effective.
In Arkansas.
Yeah, that's for sure. I've got one. At any rate, it can be mesmerizing, disgusting, fascinating, or even soothing. Go ahead and draw.
One of my first girlfriends. 8865 drum roll 3. 886543.
That's one of your numbers.
Yes.
I'll start this next one off with a question, and there's some historical aspect of this question. Only you older guys will know anything about this, probably. But the question is, what's black, blue, and red? What's black, blue, and red? Some would say Carmen Basilio after a second Gene Fulmer fight. But so are these little gems here. There's a little pack of pens, three color pens. Not much to win, is it? But I'm going to give something along. It's a little bit of a piece de resistance. It's this curious mug. I'll pull it out, and this may have some connection to the people of the Pterodactyl Society. This guy may have been flying before they were. There's a picture on this mug, which could be the first and possibly the only aviation boatsmate the Coast Guard ever had. I don't know. Did the Coast Guard ever have aviation boatsmates? Did they? Okay. So that answers my question on that one. Like I say, Walt Bodner would be the expert on it, but some of you may recall the old BML rated, Boatswain Lighthouse.
Oh, yeah.
I've served as a chief like that over in Angar Island, the plowing group. he went to boot camp, and they put him on a lighthouse across the street from his parents. He served 18 years there. His tour was on Palau. We called him Catfish, even to his face. But anyway, the story goes on. There's a picture of someone on here. Whoever gets it will get a good look at it. But the fellow was only known as Jarvis. That's the fellow on the mug. He apparently was with the old lighthouse service member before the Coast Guard was formed in 1950. Now, the lighthouse service, of course, was integrated into the Coast Guard in 1939. Shortly thereafter, he was seen flying off the lighthouse in an original contraption of his own devising, which you'll see on this mug. Shortly after that, he was asked to leave the Coast Guard. About the same time, he then is credited with founding the American Science and Surplus Company, who has these cups. So pull another one out.
Okay, here we
Somehow
go.
this soul gets this one.
886553. Good, I didn't give him a ticket.
My name is Steve Little.
There we go, okay. The curse of the Bambino is on.
Nice going, Bruce.
We're kind of coming unglued.
Bruce says this end up.
That's something that every agent want to have.
Definitely. Our next
You're
item.
watching that one out.
This one?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have the balls to do it. I'll be honest with you. It's not. Nobody would want to pay anything for this. Well, like I say, now that we're on mugs here, I've got a good one. It's one of a kind. Oh, wait a minute. I've got the wrong mug.
Okay.
This is a good one. This is a good one here. It's also one of a kind. I don't know, maybe the Gee Dunk or maybe the gift shop down there at Fletsy sells something like this, but I guarantee you this doesn't come from any of those places. At any rate, I procured this one elsewhere, and it's our next item up for draw. And it's just a regular coffee mug. Has a very familiar engraving on it. It's the Coast Guard Special Agent badge. And it's not the same as the ones that we're selling down at the hospitality room. So draw another name.
Okay, here we go. 886385. 886385. Do we have a winner? There we go. Very good. Very good. There we go. No, sit down, please, man. Please. We deliver. Just like pizza. There we go. Okay, terrific. Moving right along.
Hope you enjoy the coffee out of that mug, guys.
That's good?
No.
Okay, since we seem to be on a mug roll here, our next item for draw is a real shooter's mug. Pull it out here and display it. In fact, if this item were real, you could literally shoot your mouth off while you're drinking your coffee.
Okay, here we go. 886488. 88.
My goodness, I'm not
6488. Okay.
Give that one to my wife.
Okay, we got it's handsomely semi-gift wrapped. Yeah, get that one to TSA.
Goodness, I'm driving.
Yeah, get through New York State.
He doesn't want to ad-lib the rest of it.
Yeah.
Got to get his ducks in a row.
I can tell my joke about the bank.
Well, we got another gun-related item coming up here. You want to pull it out of the box and hold it up and show it? The item is really a shotgun shell. It's actually a digital coin bank. It actually recognizes and counts each and every coin as it's inserted, then automatically tabulates your total savings. Pardon?
What gauge is it?
Well, it's an oversized 12 gauge for sure.
Yeah. Boom.
Like I say, it tabulates your total savings. The maximum value on the little LCD screen, I've got batteries in it, so it's ready to go, will display a number of $9,999.99. Although you'd be hard pressed to cram almost 10,000 bucks worth of coins into that thing.
Real well thought out. We have a donation. Good.
Careful, one more penny and it goes boom.
It has an instruction sheet that comes with it, translated from Chinese. That's inside the unit. Oh, by the way, like I said, it's already charged up. It means fresh batteries, American-made batteries, and it's good to go.
No, not really, because I put the penny in and nothing came out.
We'll let whoever wins it figure all that stuff out.
886446.
It makes a little shotgun blast also when the coin goes through.
Maybe you need a cord.
886446.
Take it up.
All right. Mary, there we go.
Mary, quick and trade.
Save that for our retirement.
Okay, very good.
It works really well, but you need Chinese money.
Well, since we're talking about, quote, shots, unquote, from the shotgun shell bank, I've got another kind of shot here. I know there's a couple of us here who carry hip flasks. One of them is sitting over here, Colonel Farrick. And I have a Coast Guard issue hip flask. It has something in it which I use to make magic coffee. And like I say, mine is a Coast Guard issue. It's engraved from Vietnam. But this hip flask is really for a big hipster for sure. That's the only guy that could do it, and I'll hold it up so you can see. It holds 1 gallon. That, girls and boys and girls, is a lot of medicinal purpose there. Yeah. And if you'd hold it up, Steve, I'll point out the features. This goodie is made of high-quality surgical steel with the traditional screw top lid attached so it won't get lost, which it otherwise might during the consumption of its contents.
Okay, are we ready? 886358. 8863. There we go. Coach Locker will look forward to you this year.
Yeah.
I gave the tape.
Hey, Steve. Steve. Well, since he was against the bomber, I mean, we should at least fill that up for him and get him back home.
We'll probably have enough left over in the hospitality room to do just that. But I don't think they'll let him on the airplane with that much liquid in the container. Well, like I say, we'll get on to something a little more utilitarian now. When I said little, I meant it. Our next item up for draw is a teeny tiny table lamp. But whether a tiny table, you can put it either on teeny tiny tables or even a full-size desk, this little critter does throw a nice puddle of light for its size. And I've got one at home, and I keep it on the dresser so I can tell what color socks I'm pulling out of the drawer. It also has batteries. I don't think they're made in this country, but they're supposedly good. And it's good for about 15 hours of making a good reading lamp, or take it on your next camping trip, or whatever.
Okay, 886485. 886485. Lonnie Johnson. All right.
Lucky table. Now I'll tell you what, I'm leaving shortly for another reunion, Coast Guard reunion in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. I'm supposed to stop along the way and pick up a white elephant gift. You don't have to stop anymore.
Semper Paratus, you're always ready.
Perfect.
Okay, here's another utilitarian item. It's a wet-dry car vacuum. And it's a high-power, labor-saving device. It plugs into your vehicle's cigarette lighter, and it sucks up direct, both wet or dry. And it's even good enough for a minivan friendly. It's that, you know, a minivan is 9 feet long. You can clean your minivan. And it has 2 attachments for the floors and one for getting stuff out of the seat seams. And it includes a cleanable filter. And with all these features, how could you go wrong on this one?
Don Pardo just might as well retire right now. 886413. 886413. He'll have the cleanest car on the block. There we go. Thank you.
Mine's the white van, Don. Suck the wax out of his ears.
And now I've got something direct from Dick's Old Time 5 and 10 cent store down in Old Town Branson. It's an unusual Coast Guard related item. Actually, it's a U.S. CG parking only sign. It's handy when a coastie's shopping at these Air Force and commissaries. Just pull into the base commander's slot.
Magnet, yep. I can see it. You could duct tape some magnets onto the back.
Or you could pull into the senior NCO spot, although seriously I don't recommend it. But it's better to stick it with within the curtilage or diggings of your own home. In other words, home sweet home. So that's
okay. 886399. 8863.
I got it.
Good, Ray. Outstanding.
Yeah, give him the bag. That's it.
I would have left there with more than just a postcard yesterday if I known they had these.
There you are.
Here we go.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, we've got another Coast Guard related item here. And to be honest with you, it's a pretty good read. It's by an author named David Helver. And he's a licensed private investigator who has written extensively on ocean and coastal conservation issues. He's an award-winning journalist for several national publications. He's produced over 40 documentaries for PBS. In this book, it's titled Rescue Warriors, the U.S. Coast Guard, America's Forgotten Heroes. He documents 2 years of his work with various coasties, all the way from the Academy to at New London to the Bering Sea and to the Northern Persian Gulf. He presents a real insightful look into Coast Guard activities worldwide. He wrote this about 3 years ago, and this is the book here. That will be our next item.
886489.
I got that again, but I've already got the book, so why don't you pull another one?
Okay. Very generous of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Did you like the book?
Very good book.
That's a good book. Yeah, it is. It is. 886432. There we go. Outstanding. Outstanding.
It's a hot table.
Great.
It's what you need, Joe. That's what.
Merry Christmas, honey.
And now we come to our last item. It's also Coast Guard related, but it's a little different. It's an adventure serial in 12 exciting chapters. I think this thing was made around 1937, the year before I was born.
One of the first DVDs.
Yeah, they're transferring a lot of these old action serials on a DVD. You can get them. I've got a lot of them myself. Batman, The Phantom, a lot of those old movies. I saw some of them when I was a kid, but didn't get a chance to see the whole serial. But now I know how it starts and ends and everything else. This one stars a fellow named Bela Lugosi as the bad guy. And he's rescued, he's pursued rather, by a Coast Guard agent. Terry Kent is his name, and it's, of course...
I got that. You were.
Have you really?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It is. I like it when he pins the medal on and says, we're going to call in the brigade, and about, I don't know, 16 or 17 guys, and you see them repetitively throughout the movie.
and they get in a fight, and the guy's hat never goes up.
Yeah. Or a lot of times, like, you see the hat go off, and the next scene it's back on, and there's no break in the action. But, anyway, Terry Kent is he's trying to solve an international, or catch this international criminal scientist Borath, who wants to auction off a dangerous gas he's invented, which could decimate American cities back in 1937. And when that's when this timely piece was produced, and it'll be our last item up.
Okay. 886435. 886. There we go.
Bingo.
There's a lucky couple.
We'll be reading and watching.
Okay, well,
Two
Bruce,
true stories.
thank you very much for your efforts putting that together. That was great. That was great. Now, before we grant liberty, except for the duty guns mate.
Stop again.
Start again. Bruce is going to lead us in a benediction.
Again, you can remain seated. You don't need to stand or anything. I'll just give a short prayer. Again, bow your hearts. Heavenly Father, we again give you praise and glory and thanks for the opportunity you've afforded us to come together in fraternal friendship, to renew warm bonds, formed and forged really in service to our nation, its people, and its leaders. As we depart this assembly, we ask for your blessing on each and every one of us as we go our separate ways and travel to our homes and resume our day-to-day lives. And Lord, charge us all, each and every one, with a vitality and an eagerness to address and deal with our tasks and missions with fidelity and honor to those both senior and junior to us, that we would be a credit to our nation and be pleasing in your eye and bless thee. This we pray, Father, in the name of your only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Can I have a short business thing? I'd like to,
if it involves a motion, the answer is no.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we have that 10-inch badge next year too.
Yeah.
I'll get two on.
No, I mean, no, have it done the same way. Have a.
I said I'll get one.
You'll get one. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. And eventually you'll win. $4,780. I got my $90 badge for free. Right. Okay, well, before we do dismiss the troops, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank you for the support you've given me stepping into this role, and Don wanted me to pass along your thanks for the support he got from everybody over the last few years. He was up here at the front of the podium, and I am really excited about continuing ahead with our reunions like this. I think it's great, and if it never ends up any bigger than this, or it ends up 300 people, or it ends up 10 people, it's going to be a good time, because we'll all have that Coast Guard camaraderie. So, thank you all for coming. Have a safe trip home. 1 minute, Duke Gunners Mate's got something to
Just
say.
mention that next year it's going to be right here, same
Next
time,
3
same
years.
place.
Right, the next 3 years, as you voted yesterday, next 3 years, we'll be here at Branson, and Bruce is already working on next year. But you know, the thing about this is you can't run out of entertainment to go to. We only had so much entertainment in Portland. Watching the tides go in and out just wasn't that interesting.
I already have the 3 contracts.
3 contracts?
Yeah, for the reunion.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Good.
I thought you were
okay.
about to get something.
Yes, Ray. I'm a minute.
I like it because I can remember how to get here 3 minutes.
I'm not sure those bread counts are still going to be on Route 90.
Okay, and one more.
I got one more announcement. We're videotaping this reunion from start to finish because it's our 10th anniversary. And what the video production company wants to do is interview each and every one of us for at least 1 minute. And we're running out of time, so we have a fellow here, Justin, who's going to do the interview in the Medal of Honor room. And I'm going to pick the next guy to go and be interviewed. Walt, you haven't been interviewed, have you? Okay. And we'll retire to the hospitality room. When Walt shows up, we'll pick another one. Hopefully we'll get through those in the next hour, possibly, at about 1 minute, 2 minutes a pop.
Save me a seat.
Okay.
Thank you.